Hello, EnderSword here again, this time with a Gold League game. We're going to be looking at the Zerg player Aero, who actually posted this game on the TeamLiquid.net strategy forums, looking for help. And just to kind of frame the game, he was basically asking for, how do I deal with Colossus builds? I don't really know, as a Zerg player, how I'm supposed to be dealing with Colossus. So throughout the course of this game, bear in mind that that's kind of where the direction that we're going in. However, I don't really believe that Colossus was the issue in the game. So we're going to see how the Colossus actually did impact what was going on, and whether or not that was actually the problem for Aero in the game, or whether it was just general problems overall. So his opponent is going to be obviously a Protoss player. We're going to see TechaA over here in the top of the map. And he's going to be the Protoss that obviously gets some Colossus out onto the field. So we'll see how this develops over the course of the game. The three key things that I'm going to be looking at during this are, number one, scouting helps you know what to do. That seems like an obvious statement, but a lot of people do tend to miss it, particularly in the lower leagues. They tend to scout to find out where their opponent is, and then they don't actually pursue it beyond that. They don't bother to continue to scout. They don't bother to see when expansions were taken, what tech is going up, anything like that. They just kind of scout where the person is, then go along their merry way and try and do their own build and tech up to their own things with no real reference to what the opponent is actually doing. And we'll see in this game that the Zerg player's tech path doesn't really make a lot of sense if he knew what the Protoss player was actually going for. Second thing that we're going to look at is the idea of creep being extremely useful, particularly, well, I was going to say particularly against Protoss, but that's not even true. Both Protoss and Terran, the creep just gives you complete control of the map. It gives you vision of the map. It basically slows them down in that they have to kind of be killing creep tumors. Nobody wants to engage you on creep. Gives you this very strong speed bonus on everything, and the big key to fighting both of the other races is getting a surround on them from all angles, using your speed to your advantage. A lot of other players are very hesitant to walk onto creep, but a lot of Zerg players don't seem to realize both the psychological impact and the actual in-game impact that exists in having creep. As soon as they step on it, they know that you can see their army completely at all times, and that you're going to have a speed advantage over them. And it's often something that Zerg players really underestimate. So you want to get that creep started early and just be spreading it everywhere. Particularly if both players are just kind of turtling in their own locations, you can have creep over the entire map way before they're ever going to push out at you. So it's something you really want to take advantage of. The third thing is basically don't id relieve the game. By this, I mean, one, don't rage on everything. Don't just decide that something is imbalanced and you don't know how to beat it, so you're just going to stop even trying. But the other aspect to that is try and be aware of where you actually are in the game. So there are often times that people will lose a game that they are actually winning because they don't have a lot of situational awareness of what's going on in the game. They feel like maybe they just lost a battle or they just lost a base, but they don't really realize, due to either lack of scouting or just game awareness, where their opponent actually is in the game and how much trouble they are actually in. So we'll kind of see how that comes up more towards the end and address it at that time. So for now, we'll just take a look at what's going on here. The Protoss is actually being fairly greedy on this so far. This isn't a fairly standard expand or anything. This isn't like a one-gate sentry type expand. This is actually fairly vulnerable to being kind of overwhelmed by the Zerg player. If he had gotten quick roaches out, if he had gotten a lot of lings out quickly, this is actually a fairly risky thing to do. So the Protoss is actually going for a bit of a economic greedy build, given that what he's doing is just kind of sticking his neck out, and it's not necessarily something that could be completely defended. We can see that the Zerg player has enough larvae and enough money to just be going after this, even if he just made a bunch of lings. About 20 lings would easily just kind of wash over this, and there wouldn't be a lot that he could do to catch up, at least not for the next little bit here. He's only got the 2 gateways out onto the map, a third one coming in. He could lose this nexus fairly easily, but he did kind of stick his neck out there, and so you're giving your opponent an advantage on what he's doing. But let's see, why did Aero decide not to attack this? Well, he decided not to attack it because he didn't know about it. He doesn't know that the expansion is actually going down there. He doesn't really know what sort of tech is behind this. The last time he checked into this base, all that he could see was the warp gate. Doesn't even know that this isn't even being blocked off or anything like that. You want to be a little more proactive with the scouting in the game. This Overlord could be moving over to try and take a look through the base. You could be running a few lings around. He's obviously checking for a third here, but his effort up the front is going to be a little too minimal, so he's not going to be able to see that that is actually there. Given that he's going for the lair, it would be nice to see maybe this get into a position to change into an overseer immediately after that's done and try and take a look. I will give him credit for the fact that he is looking out to see if the Protoss is taking a third, but he hasn't actually verified whether the natural is being taken or what sort of tech path or anything the Protoss player is doing. Back home, he's going for his own third, which he's got some pretty good saturation so far. We've got 46 drones out on the map against 39 probes. He could be getting more than that. There's 11 larvae just waiting on the ground, 12 now, and he's got enough money to turn those all into drones if he wanted to. But he's actually just kind of leaving a lot on the ground there that he's not quite converting. This one just getting a queen now. I will give him credit throughout this game. He hits these injects actually quite well throughout the course of the game. At 10 minutes for this queen to only have 22 energy on it with the hatchery half injected, and this one only to have 30 with this thing almost fully injected. He's actually hitting those pretty much like clockwork. However, he's not getting creep out onto the map at all. There's no creep tumors down anywhere. He's just kind of dumping it with the Overlord here, but that doesn't tend to help you get that speedy expansion or anything going on throughout the game. At this point, 11 minutes kind of into the game, he should really be at least out to here in this sort of area so that he's actually playing in some open space. Again, he doesn't know what the Protoss technology is going to be, has not moved this Overlord into this position, so he's flying completely blind other than knowing that there's no third that's been taken. We'll see another attempt at a little scout, or at least seeing if anything is moving out coming up the front here. But you really want to be controlling this area, particularly that he doesn't know what is going to come out. The Colossus really needs to be surrounded. You can't be fighting against it in, say, a choke or something like that. So you're going to want to have wide open space like this, just covered in creep, so that you can surround it completely with your roaches. He's going for the Hydras, which are pretty good against gateway units or potentially air units. However, against the Colossus, they do tend to be fairly weak. But he doesn't really know overall what's there. The Zerg that came up just now saw that there was one Colossus out onto the map. So at 12 minutes into the game, he's now aware that the tech path that he's already chosen is not necessarily optimal for that. So he does fire down the Spire, presumably to get some Corruptors out. He could have been a lot more proactive with this. He had money at different periods of time. When you do get the Hydra, you generally want to get the range almost immediately after that. They're not near as useful without that range. You kind of want them back a lot farther so that they are creating an arc behind your roaches and doing a lot more damage. So the Spire there kind of just going up in reaction, but that means he's going to be behind by the fact that about 4 Colossus are going to be out before he can ever produce his first Corruptor in order to counter them, and that's going to make a little bit of a difference in the game. In terms of upgrades, doing fairly well there, going for 2-2. It's a bit late, however, the Protoss is just not upgrading anything at all, so the Zerg player is actually going to be quite a bit ahead in that, even though he could be more ahead if he was a little more proactive in getting these down. With the knowledge that the Colossus are out, he's still fairly strong on the Hydra production. Finally, we are now getting creep tumors going down out onto the map, but it is a lot later than it would have been preferable. He now knows that there is a third that's going to go down there. He doesn't actually see it, but he knows that his Zergling in that area was killed off. So that's some indication, again, that he's not really planning to move out right at this moment. He can see that nothing is coming across. He's got control of this watchtower, which is great. He kind of knows that this is now active out onto the map, and he'll be able to see that coming in, and now know that, okay, the Protoss army is coming this way. In response, he's building more Hydralisks, which aren't too great against the Colossus, of course. And he's now got a decent amount of creep spread up here, but it's not going to really allow him to get a good spread. And these are going to be picked off as the Protoss army comes in. He does kind of make the mistake of stopping there to allow the Zerg player to kind of gather his thoughts. In terms of this attack angle, you can see that the Protoss moves into a position that is hard to surround, but the Zerg does a pretty good job of actually spreading out his Hydras into a fairly wide arc there. The Colossus are just kind of not focusing their fire on any one portion and being a little delayed in taking things out. The Corruptors coming in directly into the Stalkers is not usually a good angle. You kind of want them flanking so that they're attacking the Colossus from the side or the back. It makes it harder for the Stalkers to really pick them off, and you can more efficiently take down the Colossus numbers that are there. Does manage to pick this last one off, but we can see reinforcements already coming back in. So overall, I'm just going to pause there and look at the damage assessment of what's going on so far. So the Zerg player feels like he just barely won that and doesn't have a lot of units left. He's kind of remaxing up here. We still got a lot of larva, why can't I say that, left on the ground here. But the Protoss player is feeling like his entire army is completely gone. He's only got a handful of gateways, about 6 gateways out on the map. I don't think there's any more there. So his ability to reinforce is fairly limited. His money is actually fairly limited. 850 minerals is pretty good. That'll give him about 1 warp in off this. But his gas isn't really all that great, not at this point. He's only just now taking this gas at his 3rd and taking that gas at his 3rd. So he's not going to be great at replenishing gas-heavy units, but he's got 2 of these Colossus in production here. So he's basically got 1 warp in there, and then he's got these 2 coming out, but his overall supply is only 98 out of the 174. He's 10 behind an actual worker. So overall, what he's going to have is this plus about 6 Stalkers and 2 more Colossus, and that's going to be it for that production cycle. Conversely, the Zerg player has this group of units, this group of units, and then 14 larvae to spend, and then immediately after that, he's got enough gas, he's got plenty of minerals that he could keep pumping out. He's even got this hatchery now going up that's going to be providing even more larvae for him. He's got enough money to continue to expand. Nothing is quite mined out yet, although the mains for both players are going to be mined out shortly. So after that attack, the Zerg really should be stopping and thinking of remaxing his army. So where do I want to move from here? What is the status of what I just did to the Protoss player? The Zerg feels like he has been hurt a lot. He has lost a huge bulk of his army. He's lost most of his roaches, and he's got these Hydras out on the map, and he's just remaxing. He feels like he is behind at the moment, but maybe has a bit of a window of opportunity. So let's see kind of where he goes with that. One, it is going to be hard to make any sort of push against the Protoss, again, when you don't have creep coming up towards this area, particularly with Hydras on the map. They move slower off creep, so they're not going to be as useful. We know that they are vulnerable to the Colossus, which, while he did just take out 4 or 5 of them, is you've got to expect that there's going to be reinforcements to that coming out. He hasn't re-upped his corruptor numbers yet, but we got 12 larvae still on the ground, and he just made about 14 units worth. Let's see what he is making. So instead of going for any corruptors, knowing that there are Colossus on the map, did go for roaches and hydras again, which are unfortunately fairly weak against it. I do like getting the infestation pit here. He does have a lot of minerals and a lot of gas available to him, and that will be able to halt the movement of the Protoss army. However, it's not an immediate response. He can't get anything out of that quickly. He's kind of got to get the pathogen glands, got to let the energy build up, things like that. But instead of waiting for that investment to kind of pay off, instead of waiting to get more corruptors out onto the map, he is just moving this army into the Protoss base and deciding to not only go and Mega Strike, but actually attack at the third, where he's going to take the rocks down. There's going to be a lot of warning for the Protoss player. He's going to be at this horrible angle. He's completely off creep. Now the Protoss has him in a really bad choke. It's hard to get any form of surround on this at all. The roaches, there are way too few of them to provide enough bulk for the army. The Hydra's just kind of manically firing in all directions, and they do get taken out. Even still, and I will pause again, because you can see that the game is almost over, Protoss still is 118 to 126. The Zerg has an army here coming up, and there is almost nothing in front of the Protoss army. We're going to get these 8 stalkers, some of them badly injured, and there are still only these 6 gateways. He now realizes that this is a problem, and he's going to throw down more, but even then, the Protoss player doesn't have the same amount of money as a bankroll as the Zerg player does. The Zerg can just continue to make Zerglings and roaches just all day long here, and he's got 16 more larvae out, whereas the Protoss has finally realized, hey, I don't have the production to keep this army up. So when I get pushed back the first time, and when I get attacked just now, yes, all my Colossus are still alive, thank God, but I don't have any way to reproduce my gateway army, and this is actually very vulnerable right now. He can't move these Colossus out to attack the Zerg player. He might try to take some sort of central position, but there is no universe in which these are pushing into the bases at this point. The Zerg's production is just going to be off the hook. He's got money that will allow him to reinforce and reinforce. The Protoss player is going to have to walk onto creep, where having the very few gateway units is going to make the Colossus very vulnerable. We do have the Spire tech, meaning that corruptors can come out. He's even going up to Hive tech, so he's going to have a lot more options later on. And he does have the Infestor pit, which while he didn't get pathogen glands, he could still dump the infestors off to the side for a little bit and get some fungals down on the army a little later on. Given that he's not even entering into the base yet, that's certainly a possibility. So the Protoss does kind of move out, and Aero, fucking Colossus, unbeatable, deciding to just kind of throw his forces against it. There was absolutely no reason to do this at the moment. There is no need for this. Doesn't end up doing any damage to the gateway units. Doesn't bring his whole force in. He does have these corruptors here. If they had attacked at the same time, well, 6 stalkers aren't going to take out 4 corruptors anytime that quickly when you've also got a force attacking the front of them. This is the type of point in time that you want to just mass remax a bunch of roaches, mass remax a bunch of lings, something like that, get a few corruptors out and take them out. He is down even to those 3 colossi, so even in this kind of bad move, does end up losing one there, and again is just in no position whatsoever to push against the Zerg player. Even after absolutely donating these units, he's still only 10 behind in supply, and we've got 28 larvae just sitting on the ground with enough money to just make something out of them instantaneously. There's absolutely no way that the Protoss is winning this game, but because Aero got frustrated, he just decided that Colossus were not something that was beatable. Well, you just beat them back here. Very unprepared. You still just beat them by having a better economy, by having better production, and by having a better ability to reinforce. He was reinforcing during this battle, even attacked at a really bad angle, and was still able to actually repel this attack with no damage done. But he feels like, oh, I lost my army. As Zerg, you're kind of supposed to lose your army. Sometimes you just do a lot of damage to reset the Colossus count. You do a lot of damage to reset the tank count for Terran players. It's okay if you lose your army, provided you can rebuild it, provided that you're still teching up behind it. And he was doing everything right on this front. He's still teching up to a hive. He had the infestation pit behind that. He could have done a lot with this. The Protoss player is now mined out at his home base, so he's going to be on 2. There's not a lot of good opportunities for him to take another base. He's got creep there. He's got the burrow here. He's not teching to anything else, so he's going to be stuck on the Colossus tech, which is not a great thing actually to be stuck on once you've got the Corruptors out. The Corruptors could kind of control the map. With the hive coming up, turn that into a greater spire, and now we're in a Brood War Infestor game, which is pretty hard to actually lose when you're off 4 base, given a 2 base mining for Protoss. So don't get frustrated, because this was actually a Zerg win. He just didn't realize it. Sometimes you just get frustrated and don't realize that that's the case. So overall here, I've been talking a lot at the end, but I feel that this was actually the main point of this game, was that don't leave games that you've actually lost, or actually won. You can leave ones that you lost. And just remember that you're supposed to be losing your army, you're supposed to remax. So just kind of get used to that, and make it hard for the person to come into your bases and onto your creep, by getting that creep out there early, just taking control of that map and using that speed to your advantage. So Aero, very well played in terms of the macro. The injections were actually quite good. It's only near the end that he wasn't quite pumping them out as quickly. But really at like 10-13 minutes into the game, he had only missed maybe 1 inject on each of his hatcheries in terms of 1 full cycle. So actually fairly good for a gold level with that type of macro. You can certainly be overwhelming your opponent. Just get that creep out, learn how to attack it, and don't get frustrated when you lose your army. Thanks for watching, guys. Oh, and subscribe to me or whatever.